Okay, I think we're ready.
Welcome to the Late Tonight Show, starring Pete Sheriff, with special guests Dennis Seaton from Musical Youth, Pat Sharp, Gavin James, and now, live from Solihull, just outside Birmingham, just off the A45, please welcome your host, Pete Sheriff.
Good evening. Welcome to the Late Tonight Show. My name's Pete Sheriff. Thank you for joining us. We've got a slightly different show for you this evening. It's a clip show, which they do on sitcoms when they've run out of ideas. Anyway, tonight we are looking back at the last 3 or 4 shows and going to give you an idea while we're getting ready behind the scenes for our big show next week. More details on that to come in just a while. However, let's check out a clip from last week's show when we were talking to DJ, producer and big all-round DJ agent, the one and only Mr. Gavin James. Check this out. Gavin James, all-round DJ and agent extraordinaire. Tell me about you. Where did you start in the industry? Where did you start in the business? What inspired you to become a DJ? Because a lot of people have various different ways they get into the business. Some people can, some people are drafted. Some people fall into it by accident. Other people go through it from family. Tell us about you.
Okay, so my dad was a full-time professional DJ right the way through the 70s and 80s. So as a young lad growing up, I'm talking at the age of 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I remember there just sort of being decks in the house and music always playing, sort of loading vans up and other DJs coming around and talking about gigs and stuff. So I was quite aware of at a young age that, what was going on around me. And obviously, as a young lad, your dad's your hero, isn't he?
Absolutely.
And I think I got to about 7 or 8, and I ended up going on a few gigs with him.
Yeah.
Because he was more of the classic, I guess you'd call like the classic mobile DJ.
Yeah.
He had a van full of kit, and he just did lots of weddings and company functions and stuff like that, all around Bedfordshire, Northamptonshire. I mean, prior to that, he'd done some sort of pretty big stuff in the 70s, but sort of towards the mid to late 80s, he was doing local stuff, and I used to go and help him on a Saturday night. I'd sort of 8 or 9 years old, I'd help him unload the van, and we'd turn up to weddings and we'd settle the gear up, and he'd do the gig, and I just remember sort of sitting and watching and taking it all in, really enjoying the music and what he was doing, and he was quite a very much an extrovert type DJ.
Yeah, I was going to say, what sort of DJ was he?
Yeah, very much extrovert type DJ. In actual fact, if anything, Pete, I would say he was more of a comedy entertainer than he ever was a DJ, really.
Yeah.
I guess if you crossed Bobby Davro and Robin Williams and put them behind a pair of turntables, that was kind of what it was like.
Okay.
He was very popular in the Bedford area. And do you know what, Pete? To this day, I sometimes still do gigs myself in the Bedford area. And I'll get some of the older guys come over and they'll give me a little nudge and go, "You're not as good as your dad."
Do you think that being I call the type of people that you and I are legacy DJs, right? So do you think that legacy DJs get more of an advantage in this day and age, or you have to, like my son, he wanted absolutely nothing to do with my DJing career at all. He wanted to do it all by himself, right? And he did very well and does very well now. But do you think, from my point of view, my dad was a DJ like yours, and I sometimes do that. I sometimes do that manager nudge. All right, my dad. All right, you got any gigs? Do you think that you, as a legacy DJ like me, have benefited, or do you think you were better off out of it?
Well, it's funny you mention this, Pete, because I sometimes, especially now, because I think back in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s, a good DJ, I think, was kind of judged upon his ability to entertain an audience.
Yeah.
Put on a bit of a show. And that generally was how it was in those days. The guys put on a bit of a show.
Yeah.
It was a bit of an event, and then the DJs that weren't able to do that, they would be the ones that would be in the pubs.
Yeah.
And I guess I don't want to say the lesser venues, but, it was always the big personalities that would get the higher paid gigs, get the better work.
Yeah, yeah.
And I kind of sort of moving forward to today, I have that battle, Pete, now, because that kind of DJing is ingrained in me, like the personality side.
Yeah, totally.
So I sort of grew up doing wedding receptions and school discos and I was a mobile DJ, and I went into clubs when I was about 21.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I was a mobile DJ long before I could mix. And I sometimes I do these gigs now where I'm kind of doing gigs with the Ministry of Sound and some Kistery stuff and playing for some of these brands like Eden, where you just don't use a microphone. You just wouldn't do it. You know, you just don't. They don't expect it. They don't want it.
Yeah.
And I always feel like I don't really get out of second gear on those gigs.
Yeah.
They're nice to play, and it's prestigious, and it's great to play that kind of music on a big sound system, and you get the accolades that go with it. But I always feel like I just want to get on the mic and just go, "Hello, everybody."
Happy birthday, Sharon.
yeah, that's it. So I sometimes fight with myself and go, no, Gav, just put the mic down. Don't use the mic.
I remember you and Andy were at the Cream gig, and somebody couldn't get there when they were stuck in traffic or something. And you guys, we'd just done a bingo bango, and you and Andy said to me, just do an hour. Just to cover for the person who's stuck in traffic or something. And mate, it was great. It was big, like you say, big system, decks everywhere, no one watching because it was like 4 PM or something. And we'd had a few beers, I must admit, because it was a Cream gig, you know what I mean? So I was like, right, okay, here we go. Got me memory stick. And that's the first thing. That's the first thing that I find weird, is that I just want to keep turning around and going through my record box. No, memory stick. Okay, that's fine. Then you've got CDJs that some people have, some people don't. Some people like like I see your beautiful turntables behind you, and we're going to get a tour from you in a minute of what you've got right there.
Okay.
But some people like the turntables, some people like the CDJs. I remember playing my second record and it just being a complete disaster, because I was thinking, I got, and all I wanted to do is pick the microphone up, and I looked to my left and looked to my right. I went, no, Mike, nothing. I'm here. Yeah. That's it. Either press stop or start. That's it. So
I think, though, I do maintain, though, Pete, that I think if you're the kind of DJ that can jump on the microphone and talk and command an audience, it's good to have that in your locker than not have it. So it's easier to have that ability and not use it than not have the ability and one day you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you and I, we've discussed this before, but we've seen so many DJs who could have rescued their either bad mix or bad situation by just picking up the microphone and going, don't panic, everyone. Do you know what I mean? And I think that you and I and probably a handful of other DJs that I know, especially in the places that we've worked, can do that and pick up a mic and go, don't worry, and rescue a situation that is quickly getting out of control.
I think it's probably different for the DJs coming through now. They probably don't need to have that kind of personality and get up and go on the mic that DJs like us probably have, because I don't think the crowds in this day and age particularly expect it. I don't think the young kids really want it.
Sometimes I think they don't understand it, you know. In fact, hang on there a sec, Gav, because you're getting a text coming in. Now, you're the first guest who's had a text. Hang on.
Oh my God! Why should I be worried?
Well, it depends how you look at it. A big hello from DJ Ian T. There you go, mate.
Ian T. Well, there's a man that's great on the microphone.
Absolutely, there's no better. He's a legend.
Yeah, he's a good lad. I like Ian. Got a lot of time for Ian, and he deserves some sort of knighthood for all his DJ sets he's put in over lockdown.
I think there's he's certainly on top of the list for some kind of knife action. So sword action. So look, Gav, I've got you right where I want you, and there's so many things I want to ask you. When I first met you, and I've tried to think back to the day that you and I first met, and I cannot pinpoint exactly when it was. You kind of came into my consciousness as go and have a look at him downstairs. It was one of them. You always kind of that guy you wanted to go and have a look at, because whether you got turntables on the go, you always had something, whether it's turntables or you're just being a little bit cheeky on the mic to the ladies, or you were just, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When, to your memory, when was it when we first crossed paths? Can you remember?
I can't pinpoint it, but I want to say it was around 2014. I'm presuming it would have been Butlins Minehead.
I think so. I
probably
think you
an
were
80s
playing
or
in
90s weekend.
Yeah.
80s or 90s weekend, but I can't. Other than that, I can't pinpoint. But I know we hit it off pretty much straight away, didn't we? We had a good chat.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. And then and then and then I think after all the work was done, I think on that or the following week, I think it was 2 weekends back to back. I think it was you, me, and Andy, and we found ourselves in a situation where all the work was done. We were stood at the bar, and that's where Magic Lemonade, I think, was born.
The Magic Lemonade. Yeah, we've all been caught up by that a few times.
Well, this is the thing, right? Now, I had a discussion with someone this afternoon about this, is that no one else other than you has ever heard of it. So tell us the ingredients to Magic Lemonade, Gav, because I'm desperate to know.
Well, the Magic Lemonade stems from years and years and years ago. I used to do this little bar on a Saturday night, and it was round the corner from my house.
Yeah.
And they were like, you mustn't have a drink when you're DJing. You know, you mustn't do that.
Yeah.
So me being sort of 2021, all my mates were in there having a beer and what have you. I thought, I know what I'll do. I will get a bottle of R. White's lemonade and I'll put a quarter vodka in the bottom of it and then fill the rest with lemonade. And I think you'll find that it was coined Magic Lemonade by your good self. When we went back to my accommodation one night after an 80s weekend, I think it was, and you were pouring yourself a vodka and orange in the room.
Yeah.
And then you were pouring yourself vodka, and then you were using my Magic Lemonade to top it up.
The thing is, I remember, what were we doing? We were doing something. Where did we? I think it was Skegness, and you and I, we'd been and done Bingo Bango. It was a Sunday, so we were done. We were finished. And I did see you just look a little bit worried there. I'm not telling that story, so don't panic. We'd done Bingo Bango. We do have a story, but it's not for the maybe it'd be on the DVD extras. It was the day we did bingo, and we'd done the gig. You were finished, and then you disappeared for a little bit, and then the next thing we know, you were off with your outfit back on stage, waving at people, and something completely different was going on, but you were there lording it. And you see, that's what I'm getting at. You as a DJ are not just a DJ, you're an all-round entertainer, and that's why I wanted to get you on the show, because I believe that there still is somewhere a market for the sort of DJs that we are. We can both put 2 records together. Me, just about. You, quite well. And do you know what I mean? But we can still do that personality DJ thing.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for the nice compliment, Pete. You know, and there's certain gigs that we do where they really expect that from you.
Yes.
You know, and that's why people ask for you by name at certain venues. It's not everyone's cup of tea, you know, but yeah, there are certain venues and certain gigs that we do where people book you on that strength, that if they want you to be that extrovert DJ, you can communicate, you know. Yeah. I mean, I look back to, if I look back on my time, so if I sort of think sort of 92, 93, I did my first few gigs. I was sort of 13 years old. I was doing like school discos and things like that.
Yeah.
And then obviously because my dad was a DJ, he had friends in the business, and I would go and roadie for them. Yeah. So one of the guys that comes to mind, who I spent a lot of time with on gigs, is a guy called Tony Barkley. Yeah. I still keep in touch with him. Really great guy, excellent DJ. You know, he was, he had everything. He had the musical knowledge. He had the ability to entertain the audience too. Very smooth. And little things like he was ahead of his time in the sense that, you know, he would sort of cue records to the point where the impactful part of the song would start. You get some songs that got a really slow intro. It's very, you know, he kind of got it. He knew that he had to skip that bit. Yeah. You know, so he wasn't mixing, but he was aware that to keep the floor busy,
yeah,
you know, you had to do that. And he was one of the first DJs that I saw kind of the way he started his show. He would kind of have like a signature tune, intro type tune. He'd walk out and run out onto the stage with a radio mic, bottle of champagne. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Michelle and John's wedding. Give them a big round of applause, blah, blah, blah. You know, before we get things going tonight, does anybody want a free bottle of champagne? You know, and he'd sort of he'd do like a quick sort of who sung this sort of thing, and maybe a little game competition. But the point I'm trying to make is it was he made it a real show.
Yes.
It was a performance, you know, and it just sets the night off on the right foot. And it was a great way to start. I mean, I wouldn't have the bottle to go out and do that on a mobile gig these days. I don't know what sort of reaction you might get.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a few guys that I used to go and help back in the day that were all very much like that. There's a guy called Mark James I used to go and help. You know, he was like lots of games and competitions and things like that. So that's kind of how I came about to be. That's where the personality side comes from.
Yeah.
I mean, also incidentally, I don't know if you know this, Pete, but when I say about my dad being a comedy entertainer, he actually went on, I think about 91, 92. He knocked the DJing straight on the head, and he actually went out as a stand-up sort of comedian.
No way.
And he would sort of do comedy and impressions, and you know, we'd do things like football clubs and pubs and working men's clubs and you know, things like that. And I actually spent 5 years going on the road with him doing that. I used to go and set his gear up for him, do his sound check, do all his tapes. It was all the backing tracks were tapes in those days.
Wow.
You know, do all his special effects, pick all his hats and wigs up at the end of it, load the car up. So I spent 5 years doing that. And I actually learned a lot about how to entertain an audience by watching him.
Got you.
And of course, going with my dad, I was also going to other shows and seeing other comedians and seeing how they do it. So I picked up a lot of the entertainment side from that.
Okay. Do you think that did you have any aspirations to go into that world, into a stand-up-y kind of, because believe it or not, folks, people who are listening, when we do a bingo bango, Gav here plays a character called Disco Dave, who is kind of a stand-up comedian stroke DJ stroke number caller, but the character that you've kind of come up with there, I mean, my Party Pete is a very pale in comparison, if you know what I mean, to Disco Dave. But the way you do that, and you just one of my questions was going to be, your dad used to be a stand-up, but what's your favourite gag of that he would have he would have used back then? What's your favourite gag? You must have a favourite gag that you can tell on the air.
Well, I mean, we're talking the early 90s here, Pete, so I probably can't say it on the radio. But no, my dad was his material was very family friendly.
Yeah.
You know, it was all really silly stuff. I think one of the jokes that sort of sticks out in my mind is, you know, there's this fella walking down the road, and this woman comes up to him and says, you know, the woman of the night comes up to him and says, you know, would you like to sleep with me for £500? You know, he said, well, I'm not very tired, but I could do with the money.
Well, hey,
there was a lot of impressions in there that, you know, it was just zany, a lot of ad-libbing, a lot of audience participation. So there's lots of stuff that he used to do.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the next question was, why didn't I go into that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think because I got bitten by the DJ bug, Pete, so badly that I didn't feel the strength and love to have a go at stand-up comedy like I did with DJing. I mean, I remember being about 11 in a maths class. I had German next. I didn't understand the maths. I knew German. I didn't understand the German. And I just remember thinking, hang about, my dad is no good at maths and he can't speak German. And we've got a nice motor on the driveway and we live in a nice house and we go on nice holidays. And I think I want to be a DJ. And from that point on, it was, mate, I would get in from school and I would jump on the decks. I'd do a full-on wedding reception on a Tuesday night in my bedroom. I'd have a buffet break and everything. That's not even a joke. You know, I'd jump straight in from school, straight onto the decks, you know, and all I had was like 60 records that my dad didn't want anymore.
Yeah.
So it was like Obla Dee, Obla Da,
nice.
Sort of old Stevie Wonder tunes, a bit of glam rock, some Elvis, you know, they're all crackly. And I played the same 50 records for about 3 years, you know. But I loved it, Pete.
It's grounding though, mate. It's that there's so many DJs that I you know what, we see so many, and you can walk down a high street in a town and you can hear different DJs, and there's varying different styles, and some mixing, some talking, some this, some that. But but I get really frustrated with a lot of the DJs that are doing the 80, 90 quid brigade that have done none of that. That have done none of that ground, and they're sat there in a bar that will remain nameless. Because I wouldn't want to pigeonhole any brands, but you know the kind of thing I'm getting at. And they're in there, they're 100 quid, 90 quid, and they've got no idea. It just pains me when people who've been through, done the Tuesday night. All right, I'm gonna do it. And you've learnt your craft. You've gone with your dad. You've dropped a speaker on your foot. You've done all the things that you need to do to understand how the business works. And then you get guys just rock up and go, hiya, I can do it for 80 quid.
But do you know what, Pete? I've got to say, I actually feel like I was really lucky to be surrounded by that immense talent at such a young age.
Yeah.
You know, I was hanging around with, obviously, 14, 15, going on these gigs, with Tony and Mark, and, my uncles are DJs as well, my Uncle Kevin.
Yeah.
And I was blessed with their experience. They would share their experiences with me.
Yeah.
So I had a good team of people around me to learn from.
Yeah.
And I guess if you don't have that, I guess sometimes it's hard to progress to the next level if nobody's advising you.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got to be honest, mate. My dad was hard on me when I was sort of a young lad coming up as a DJ. Really? Sort of hard. I remember he came to see me one night at a school disco, and I had a light bulb out on one of my light boxes.
Uh-oh.
He didn't speak to me for 2 days. He just couldn't believe that I had a paid gig, and I had a light bulb. Why didn't I have a spare light bulb? It's but it's good grounding. It was hard at the time.
Yeah.
I'm kind of thankful for it now.
Yeah, and listen, that even if I didn't, because I remember the first time I saw you, I didn't know you, and I was watching what was going on and how you, and you reminded me very much of the guy that my style and what I do is completely left the centre to what you do, and yours in reverse is left the centre to what I do. Well, I remember watching you going, man, I wish I could pull that off. Because you were naturally confident with what you were doing, and that's sometimes we see DJs they're only confident with whatever next record they're going to play, aren't they? You know what I mean? They're not super confident.
I think also, Pete, I've kind of I've been doing this now for I've been going on gigs since I was 8 years old, so. Yeah. That'll be 32 years.
Yeah.
I've been doing my own gigs since I was 12, 13. So it really is, it's almost like a second. It's the only thing that I do well, by the way. I've just got to say, don't ask me to paint a wall, fix a car, lay a carpet, sort the gas out, change a plug. Don't ask me to do any of that.
I can just
if you want me to come and play at your party, I'll probably do a good job.
I can just about do the plug thing. But there's a set of wardrobes downstairs that have been sat there for 3 months. She keeps looking at them and looking at me, and I'm going, it's not happening. It's not happening. I don't know what I'm doing.
But going back to the again, I sort of revert back to the personality side. So I spent up until the age of 15, 16 being around these great personality DJs and learning that side of it.
Yeah.
And then when I was 16, 17, I went to a proper nightclub. It was a nightclub in Wellingborough, and it was kind of the locals would take the mickey out of it and say, "Oh, you're going down Network tonight or Evolution or whatever the club was called." It was your classic 1,000 capacity Luminar type nightclub.
Sure.
Wellingborough is a relatively smallish sort of town, but they were the days of pubs closing at 11, and that's where you would end up.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I walked in this club at sort of 16, 17. Obviously, shouldn't have been in there, but sorry, Mum. And I walked in the door. My chest was pounded out with the bass.
Yeah.
And this huge sound system. And I just couldn't. I've never heard anything like it in my life. And the DJ was blending the music together. Like, I didn't know when one song finished and the next one was going to begin. It was just a non-stop music fest, mixing, putting the tunes together. I was just absolutely blown away by this, and I remember thinking, I don't know what's going on here. this guy must be playing a mega mix or something, because it's the same song playing now for the last 10 minutes. It wasn't. It was sort of Live, Enjoy, Dreamer into Spin, Spin, Sugar into Insomnia, but the way it was all sewn together, and the crowd were going crazy, and I thought, do you know what? I think I want a bit of this.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I used to enjoy DJing at Jane and Mick's wedding reception to 100 people. It was good fun. But I used to go, I'd walk into this club and think, wow, like 1,000 people, all young, having a great time, just thinking, oh, I think I want a piece of this.
Yeah.
So I kind of learned the basics of mixing, and I incorporated that into my mobile DJ sets. And I think I got to about 22, 23, and it became apparent that I really wasn't enjoying the mobile gigs anymore.
Yeah.
I really wasn't. It just wasn't sort of feeding my soul. So I started to get some midweek residencies in bars, and I was leaving the Fridays and Saturdays free for my mobiles. But it wasn't long, mate, before I decided to knock the mobiles on the head and jump into the club world.
Yeah.
It was less money. But the thing with clubs is, as a mobile DJ, you'd work 2 nights a week. Whereas, doing the clubs and bars, if you want to, and you've got the contacts, you can work 7, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah, you can. If you put yourself out there, I always believed, and you'll be able to tell me whether I'm right on this or not, that if you always get gigs if you're around. If you're around, you'll work every night of the week.
Absolutely.
If you're seen he'll do it. I remember for about 4 or 5 years, there wasn't a place that opened in Birmingham without me being on. And it was only because I used to spend all night, much to my wife then at the time's disgust, I was in town every night, just not even smashing it up, just being around.
Yeah.
Shaking hands and kissing babies. Do you know what I mean?
I think any advice actually that I'd probably give to an up and coming DJ that wants to get into that club scene, like you say, just be in the club, go and buy the DJ a drink.
Yeah.
Bring him a USB stick in with some tunes on it and say, just make yourself known to him.
Yeah.
And then what you'll probably find will happen is he'll say, "Would you stick a tune on, will you, while I go to the loo?"
Mate, that's what happened to me. That is exactly what happened to me. And the manager came over. Who are you? And I went, "Oh, I'm just covering for him." And he just, "Oh, carry on, mate. Just wanted to check." Rest is history. You know what I mean? But you're right. Yeah. That's absolutely right. That's how I got into clubs, and I think that is the best advice you could give anybody: is be around. Do you know what I mean? Be around. Talk to the guy. 90% of DJs will talk to you. Do you not think?
Pick your moment, though. Pick your moment.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Not while the buffet's on.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's just be respectful, make yourself known to the DJ. So, don't do it all straight away on week 1. Hello, mate, do you want a drink? Here's a USB stick,
You want to lift home?
At least do it over sort of 2 or 3 weeks, get familiar, So yeah.
That's
good. Where I was now, I forget what I was talking about.
Week 1. I bought you something. It's a box full of USBs. These are all my mixes. Enjoy. Got any work? We love Gav, and we'll have another clip from him in just a few minutes' time. However, a few weeks before that, we were talking to the man that is Pat Sharp. Now, Pat Sharp we were really lucky to get Pat on the show, and we're really grateful for him for coming on and telling us all about his book. Take a look at this, and you might enjoy. Pat Sharp! How are you, Pat? Are you well, sir?
Well, thank you, Pete. Yeah, that was interesting to see. That was a bit like, same for you, really, a past life, wasn't it? Seeing all those people having fun at live gigs,
Absolutely. You don't get that anymore. I kind of get it, but they're all sat down and everybody looks like they just want to eat their chicken and not listen to me playing ABBA. So, Pat, you're here. Thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate it. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Pete. It's good to flash back, and that's what I often do, really, pretty much with my career. I'm always kind of associated with nostalgia and things from the past, and so flashing back with you seems the perfect place to spend a Wednesday evening for half an hour or so.
Thank you so much. So it's all happening with you. You've got one thing I know about you is you're a little bit like me, and I think that's why we get on, because you enjoy the job, don't you? You when I see you at gigs, you just go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite lucky actually. Many gigs I play, live sets when we used to do them, and hopefully we will do again, are often with you, and you've been on before me or after me. Sometimes you're warming up for me, sometimes I'm warming up for you. But either way, we both like to party and make sure that the crowd has a good time, and we're very exuberant in what we do, aren't we? So I think that's important, you know. Even if you're cracking on a bit, you know, I'm going to be 60 next year, but I still have my best shot at getting up and bouncing around for an hour or so, even if I have to have a major sit down afterwards.
Where did it all start for you? What was for me? It was mobile discos, but for you, where was the same? Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I had a mobile disco. I always wanted to do that, and so a friend of mine and myself created one. We called it Hit Connection, but our business cards spelled Connection CONNEXION, because we thought that would be trendy and cool. And we used to go around and post them through people's letterbox. And I remember somebody phoned us up, and we thought, "Oh my God, we're going to get a booking! This is amazing!" And they phoned us up to tell us that we spelled Connection wrong.
What was your first radio experience? Because obviously we'll come on to a little bit later to the more current stuff, but where did the radio start for you?
Well, here's the thing. It started for me in a place where it's never started for anybody else, and probably never will. Right place, right time. I sat in for Steve Wright in the afternoon on Radio 1. That was my first show.
How you weren't just walking down the street and they went, "You, come here."
Yeah, you know, as I said, I had a right place, right time moment. I had a manager who got me into that position, an agent who got my demo tape in front of the then boss of Radio 1, a guy called Derek Chinnery. And he said, "No, let's give this guy a shot. Yeah, he sounds good. Let's put him on for a week covering Steve." Okay, I'll give it a go.
And the thing is, for those people who are too young or nodded off during that time period, that show was massive, wasn't it? It was humongous.
It's similar to his show now, really. You know, he still does Steve Wright in the afternoon. He's doing it on Radio 2 instead of Radio 1. Probably not with quite such a big audience because there's so many other radio stations around. But in those days, in 1982, that was September 82, that was an audience on a show like that, probably of, I don't know, maybe 14, 15 million people, perhaps.
Yeah, wow. See, I mean, what now, if you think of that, you know, 14, 15 million people all listening, so one show, well, someone would beg for that kind of audience now, wouldn't they?
Well, Saturday night TV would beg for the kind of audiences that Funhouse got on a Friday afternoon back in the day. So it's all relevant, isn't it? The fact is there's just so much more media, so much more ways of getting your fix of music or news or whatever you want. And mobile phones and the internet have made a huge difference. I mean, you and I wouldn't have been able to sit and have a chat like this and see each other, obviously, and talk to each other and let other people hear us, even on a station like Flashback Radio, unless it was a pirate station back in the day, because it wouldn't have been allowed a license, and there wouldn't have been the video, you know, that we have now, that we're on live streaming as well. So everything is totally different. And now you get an audience of like 27 people. People go, "Yes, I've got an audience, hooray! I'll take it."
So, okay, so you sit there in the chair, and my limited compared to your buttons and faders and various other things, and you go, "Okay, I'm about to go live to the nation." What's going through your head?
Well, to be honest with you, I was kind of scared. I was 20 years old and I'd never been on the radio. I didn't have any experience, but I knew that I wanted to be on the radio. So I gave it my best shot and, you know, fired off a jingle, fired off a song. And then after the first song, I had to speak. And I sort of went, made sure my mouth wasn't too dry, and opened my mouth and spoke and got out the first sort of sentence just before I ran out of breath and managed to say like that and did it. So you just go for it. I mean, I wasn't very good and it wasn't the right place to make a start, but, I was acceptable and okay. And so, I gave it a go, and 38 years later, I'm still doing all right on Greatest Hits Radio. So I'm very lucky and grateful that, I'm still on a big station that can be heard across the country and indeed like the stuff you're doing in other places. People pick up radio stations and stuff like this with streaming, anywhere, can't they? So there'll be probably people who tune into your shows, certainly online from abroad. I'm sure you get that quite often.
Yeah, Brazil is one of ours.
Yeah. Well, you know why Brazil's one of yours? Because they're nuts.
Yeah, absolutely. Way. So, where am I? Right. Okay. So I've got many questions. I'm going to come on to your book in a few minutes, because that's something that there it is. The copy that I haven't got. There you go. Look at that. Rerun the fun. We'll talk about that in just a second, because there's from what I'm told, there is some fantastic bits in it. I'll pick you up on a few in just a second. But we've talked about radio. Talk to me about Top of the Pops. Did that come with the Radio 1 thing, or were you shoehorned into that, or were the two come together? I'll take it.
Yeah, back in those days, they did come together. The only presenters of Top of the Pops through the 80s and part of the 90s were Radio 1 DJs, and they started to spread it out and put on people from children's television and stuff, people who were in the broom cupboard and people like that. So they started to spread it out and make other presenters come on. So that's fair enough, and so it should have been. But in the old days, it really was only a Radio 1 DJ who would get that job, and they would be used, every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks or every 6 weeks, depending on whether the producers wanted that person, to host the show. So yeah, I got to do it a number of times. I'm quite lucky because I'm quite unique as well, because I'm one of the few people who's both presented Top of the Pops and sung on it because of the Pat and Mick records that we had out in the 80s and 90s that were hits. So I ended up performing on it as a presenter in the early 80s, and then as a singer in the late 80s and early 90s. And then I was also a co-presenter on the last ever edition with about 5 or 6 other Radio 1 guys and other presenters, actually, for that matter, in 2006. So I've had a good run with some elongated gaps in the middle.
When you left Radio 1, and did you go straight to Capital, or because in them days Capital was just London, wasn't it? It wasn't the mammoth monster that it is we know today. It was purely London based. Did you go straight there, or did you do other things, or?
No, I didn't. I went to other places. I mean, I'd done a couple of weeks at Radio Luxembourg after my Radio 1 show covering Steve, and I went out to Luxembourg and did 2 weeks there, and then I got invited to come back to Radio 1 for a full-time job for a show of my own on a Sunday morning, and I joined with Gary Davis and Janice Long. And I work with Janice now. I hand over to her every Saturday on Greatest Hits, so it's nice that I'm still with her. And, we're still on the same team, even though it's all these years later, and we had a massive gap in between again. But no, I didn't go straight there. I went to other local stations. I went to work for a station called Radio Mercury, which is in Surrey and Sussex. Then I went to Chiltern Radio, both of which have now turned into Hearts, I think. And then after that, I got the job on Capital in 87. So I was a good 5 years after Radio 1 before I got my job on Capital, exactly 5 years. So it's quite a time of learning curves of doing local, smaller radio stations, which was what I needed to do. It's what I should have done at the start, really, rather than being chucked straight into a national show, in between DLT and Peter Powell on a Monday afternoon, where I just went, I want to go and get these guys autographs, not hand over to them.
Yeah. That's a bit like when I warm up for you at a Butlins gig. I remember the very first Butlins gig, and they said, "You got Pat Sharp," and I was like, "Come again?" And normally, you kind of at Butlins, when you see that there was a little bit on that video there of Butlins, and I'm on, then I hand over to an act, whoever it may be, the Tony Hadleys of the world or wherever, and that's it. That's normally my connection with whoever's on is a kind of tip that off the hat to whoever, and off you go. However, when I was working with you the very first time, it was the first time I'd done a DJ handover in a Butlins situation. And I was a bit, I got to say, I was quite nervous because I was like, it's Pat Sharp. What am I going to do? What is it? And because then you kind of appeared behind me, and you got a man, haven't you, that just makes sure everything's okay, and then he does one, and you come on, and I remember introducing you the first time, and you were so grateful, and it's always stuck with me because I always appreciate that because you said thanks, Pete, you know, and bang, off you went. You played your intro, and you were like a freight train. And I remember standing at the edge of the stage for like 40 minutes like this, going, I thought I was energetic.
Well, it's very, very kind of you to say so. And, you know, I think it's very important that whatever you do in life, you know, it's nice to be important, but more important to be nice. And equally, why wouldn't you appreciate someone who's warming up for you or indeed taking over after you? You know, you're all playing the same job, aren't you? And if you're not, then you're in the wrong team, you know. So it's important to just get on with people and treat people the way that you would like to be treated. So that's my philosophy. You know, if you want to be treated like a dick, then treat people like dicks, and you won't have a problem.
But I'm sure you know, in our industry there are so many.
So many dicks. Well, there you are.
Yeah, absolutely. and that is all we'll say about that. So the book then, there is so much that I need to scroll down on my script here because I've got some questions. Let's see. Greg James off of the Radio 1, he said he had no idea Pat Sharp's life would be so hilarious, and strongly suspected he didn't either. That I think is one of the quotes of the year. I think
that's Nish Kumar's quote, actually, not Greg James.
Is it really? Okay.
Yeah, that's Nish from the MASH report. And Greg's one was a must-read if you like funny things.
Oh, if you like. Okay.
Yeah, we've got Paul Sinar from The Chase. He's given a quote, and Rick Edwards and various people have. But you know what? It's been really well received, and it's not even out for another week. So we're out a week tomorrow on November the 5th. And the pre-orders are great on it, and it just had 2 pages in The Guardian yesterday, and we're going on this morning to promote it on Monday, and then various other. We're going on Steve Wright. There we are. I'm going back to my roots. I'm going to go on Steve Wright's show. Yeah, 38 years later.
I got an overlay. There we go. There's a Pat Sharp overlay. Then there's one of them available November the 5th. There you go. Look, they got one of those.
Well, I'm sure those overlays work really well on the radio.
So, what else have we got? So, go on. Tell me about the book and what led you to want to do this. Because some DJs, I know there's a few DJ books about, there's ones telling you how to be a DJ. There's ones telling you don't ever touch the industry with a barge pole. And there's other ones saying what a lovely time they've had. Yours, from what you've told me and from what I've kind of read, it's a bit of a spoof in parts. Is that right to say?
I would say it's 100% spoof all the way through. It's based on an untrue story, which is made very clear on the front cover. And that is the facts. And the reason it's based on an untrue story is, although it follows the timeline of my career, and there are things that people might recognize if they know what I've done, like Funhouse and Capital and various other bits and bobs, Going in the Jungle, etc., etc., then these all get a mention. And so do a lot of my contemporaries who I've met and worked with over the years. However, the stories that you read might make you go, really? What? Did he? Could he? For example, I was backstage at the Brits, and I have been backstage at the Brits many times. But was I the person that convinced Jerry Halliwell to wear the Union Jack dress at the very last minute and go on in that dress? Was I the person who broke up a fight at a party between Damon Albarn from Blur and Liam Gallagher from Oasis? Was I the person who helped David Hasselhoff climb up to the top of the Berlin Wall just before they pulled it down so that he could sing a song? According to the book, I was, but a lot of my memories of the 80s and 90s were obviously lost in a mist and haze of my hairspray. So, who knows?
Oh, somebody emailed me today and asked me to ask you what hair products you used when you had the whole, mullet going on.
Mm.
What?
Well,
maybe if I can slip it in. If he mentions hair, I'll do it.
yeah, you can mention hair any time. I mean, there's a whole section on hair in the book. In fact, if you go to the index of the book, it's quite fun because indexes can be a bit long and laborious. Well, the index for my book is as follows. And for those of you listening on the radio, it simply says mullet the pages 1 to 219, and then afterwards there's just a lot of blank pages. So there's a lot of mullet action going on in there. Hair products I don't use a lot in my hair though. I probably use more nowadays actually. I think use a little bit of what I use. It's just like a tub of stuff from my hairdresser. So I don't know what they're called, Menspire. So it's their whatever you call it, mousse something. I put a bit in my hair, and I've got a bit of hair, and I've got more hair than Pete has anyway. And
yeah, absolutely.
So whatever, it doesn't matter whether you are follically challenged or whether you still have hair. At the end of the day, we all like to just make ourselves the way we are, the best we can appear each day. And me and Pete at the moment on Flashback Radio have the perfect faces for that.
Phallically challenged, I like that.
No, not phallically, follically. Don't say phallically. I think you'll find phallically challenged. Phallically challenged is something a bit different, Pete, but we are online, so you probably get away with that. But
you clip if I ever saw one there, mate. We're getting some love on
great line, Pete. I love that line. I'm going to have to put that on my Twitter. Tonight I was asked if I was phallically challenged.
We're getting some love on the old Facebook here. I can put some of these up on screen. Let's have a look. I
can't believe you're operating all the things on the screen as well as doing the interview. It's amazing. You're multi-talented.
I am multitasking.
Yes.
Oh, it is an interesting one because we're on the air. Jason Donahue asks, did you shag the twins? And moving on. Thank you, Jason.
Well, you get that quite a lot. That's a lot of, people's questions to me, and has been ever since I did uni gigs. So, I normally just say yes, I'm their mother. Keeps people quiet, but the answer is technically no, because they remain good friends of mine, and they get lots of mentions in the book along the lines of that kind of thing. So grab the book, Jason, and you'll get to see the truth that's based on untruths.
A good friend of mine who's a comedian, he says you're a lovely bloke. This is Ryan Goff. Hello, Ryan. Thank you.
Hello, Ryan. How you doing, mate? I'm not sure who he thinks is a lovely bloke, whether it's you or me.
No, it's not me. Definitely. I went to school. I used to sit next to him in remedial maths, mate. So definitely not me.
Well, it might be. Hello, Ryan. Nice of you to be listening or watching, depending on which one you're doing at the moment. And I hope you're not phallically challenged like me and Pete.
I wanted to talk to you about the Fun House because the age that I am, I kind of missed it. And you and I have never discussed this before, but I don't know whether I was too old or chasing girls or whatever the hell I was doing while you were on telly. But I've never seen this particular clip I'm about to show until now. Pat Sharp's such a legend. Thank you, Pat, and hopefully we'll get him back on the show within the next couple of months and catch up and see how the sales of his book are going. Anyway, time for us to move on. We're going to go back to a few weeks ago as well with the one, the only Dennis Seaton. He's the lead singer of Musical Youth, and this is what he had to say. I've got questions for you, Dennis. I've got questions. Obviously, there's a new album coming very, very soon, but I want to go right back to the beginning of Musical Youth and find out exactly how all this came about, because for those of you who don't know, we didn't live by each other when we was kids. We were on the same bus route, and it's become a bit of a joke between Dennis and I that if I ever introduce the band, I introduce them as the greatest thing that come from the 55 bus routes.
Yeah.
And the 55 bus used to go from Chelmsley Wood to Birmingham City Centre, and at some time, a number of times, I think, you'll correct me if I'm wrong on this, Dennis, but I've been on the back of the bus, and you've been on the back of the bus, because everybody in those days, the cool thing to do would be to sit on the back of the bus and just nod the journey through, man.
If you remember, Pete, if you're old enough to remember this part, on a Monday, you could get on any bus for any distance for 5p.
Yes, that's correct.
Remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Take full advantage of that.
Well, what you see now, me and my crew, we would get on the bus. We do the 2p Sunday, 5p Monday, right? Mm-hmm. We do the 2p thing and get off at Saltley, and then get on the number 11.
Oh, the number 11 was the longest route.
Yeah, that's the outer circle around Birmingham.
Outer circle. Number 8 was the inner circle.
And let me tell you, if you've got nothing better to do, then you want a journey, get on the number 11 and go around the outer circle. It was the walkathon route, wasn't it?
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
My head as well. It was the walkathon route.
Anyway, so let's go back to the beginning. How did Musical Youth come about? I think I've got an idea, but I want to know the truth from you.
Well, give me your idea first, and we'll see if it matches.
I was under the impression that it was a school project. That's kind of what we were all told as kids. That's what was going on.
I'm going to stop you there. Right?
Okay.
Because it was never a school project.
Okay.
That would be nice if you were trying to write a story.
Yeah.
See the bracket there?
I like them air quotes there, man.
Right. So here's how it works.
Okay.
What happened was Junior and Patrick, the drummer and bass player, their dad, his friend, which was Michael and Calvin's dad.
Yeah.
He was teaching them Michael piano or keyboard and Calvin guitar.
Mm-hmm.
In the meantime, he said he was coaching his two sons. One played bass and one played drums. That's what Patrick and Junior. And then they decided to put it all together. And he was singing lead.
Right.
Fred Waite Jr. Senior. He was singing lead. And the band, he formed that in the summer of 1979.
Yeah.
And they used to rehearse in his house at number 2017 Offenham House.
Okay.
Not there anymore. Kellett Road.
Yeah.
And you can imagine he's in a masonette. So there's people above him, people to the left and right. So with the band in the living room, obviously it's going to be noise. And that's where it all started, from them two families coming together.
Okay.
And then Fred was singing lead.
Okay. And how did you did you get in there?
So then the next step now is Junior and myself were real close friends, so we were tight. Yeah. And we built up our relationship throughout the summer. And I actually went to the very first rehearsal. Okay. Band. Very, very first rehearsal. And I got banned. Yeah. As B-A-N-N-E-D, not B-A-N-D. Yeah. From the rehearsal, after the first day, his dad said, "Don't come back." Really? So, yeah. So, "Don't come back. Don't want Junior. Come on, Mel's." So I had to go with Junior to the door, and then see you later, see you after rehearsal. So a couple of hours later, we'd be hanging out again. And just because him and I were so close, and he knew I liked singing. Yeah. When they required, the band had done shows all over, mainly the black working men's clubs. Right. And festivals and stuff. Mm-hmm. And at the time it was high unemployment, so they were doing, you had the Saltley Music Workshop, I don't know if you remember, down the bottom of Saltley Gate. Yeah. The building's still there. Saltley Music Workshop was at the bottom of Saltley Gate, and as you're going up Allen Rock Road, you'd see it, just by the roundabout now. Yeah. Anyway. That place on the corner? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. As you're coming up from the roundabout, so you see it right on your left. That's on your left, yeah. The one splits off the Washford Heath, or Ward End. Yeah. Washford Heath, yeah. And then the other one goes up Allen Rock Road. Mm-hmm. Anyway, they recorded a single called Political in General. Yeah. Which the late, great John Peel played. Okay. because that was the times when DJs could pick what they wanted to play.
Yeah, back in the real days.
There were real DJs. They had to find their own music. So John Pliel paid it. From that, it was an A&R guy who heard it, because the A&R guys all used to listen to John Pliel.
Yeah.
So then this A&R guy, his name was Charlie Air, he got in touch with Tony Owens, who's the manager of the band, who was looking after the band, and Fred, and said, look, I'm interested because of what I've heard.
Yeah.
And the problem I've got is, you got this man here and these young kids. Is there any way you could find somebody to match their age?
Yeah.
And we went to our music teacher. Well, I say we. I went with Junior to the music teacher, and he said, look, you can sing. And I've tried that before, and he said, nah, you're not good enough, go away. But because of the record company interest,
yeah,
time was of the essence. So they put a little flyer in this music department to say, look, looking for music. This band's looking for a singer, musical youth, boom, boom, boom. Nobody turned up apart from me. Nobody turned up apart from me.
Is that when you took the notice out your pocket?
No, not at all. And the rest, they say, is history. But to be fair, when I did my first rehearsal with just the band, we'd written a song.
Yeah.
And that ended up being the B-side of this. No, it wasn't. We never used it, but we recorded a song in rehearsal.
Yeah.
And then I had to get onto rehearsals, and I had to rehearse 7 days a week. We had to rehearse 7 days a week. So after school, weekends, bang, bang, just trumping it out all the time.
Wow.
Practicing. And Fred was a taskmaster. It wasn't no pretty, no, you can't get it right now, so we'll give you another go. It was find the biggest ashtray. If you don't play it right, if you don't sing it right, that's what's happening to you. It's going to come your way. But to be fair, it made us better musicians.
Yeah.
And we went on and I did my first show at the Casablanca Club in Cardiff.
Okay.
And I'll never forget that. I was 14, and man, that's how you sound. That's like 14 trying to sing this song.
Got your Pavarotti on, man.
That's what it was like. But obviously we practice and get better.
Yeah.
And then we did a show. We did a showcase for the record company. Mm-hmm. And in the meantime, Charlie Air had moved from A&M Records to be head of A&R at MCA Records,
right,
which is now Universal, as you know.
Yes.
And when he signed us, and I didn't know this until he told me, he said he signed us, and people used to, because they were on offices and floors, so the MD was, it used to be a time when you'd go in and you'd have photography, promotions downstairs, and then A&R second floor, And he said people used to come from downstairs to look at him to see this man who signed this young group, but it was never going to work.
Oh, Dennis is such a legend. Well, that about wraps it up. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be back again next Wednesday night at 8 o'clock with a live show with our very, very special guest, Rozalla. She'll be here. She'll be telling us all about her new song, all about her life, her career, and all the things she's done to be the icon and legend in dance music that she is. We'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, wash your hands, and don't forget, we'll see you next Wednesday. Thank you.